I'm Alain. And in the studio with me this evening, I have Creighton, who is going to be talking to us about shamanic healing. Claire is a shamanic healer, psychic, spiritual counselor and teacher. She has trained in London through the College of Psychic Studies, the School of Insight and Intuition, Second Sight Healing, and the Spiritualist Association of Great Britain. Claire has a diploma in counseling skills and a certificate in the Foundation of Modern Psychology, and she has been in private practice for more than 8 years. Claire, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Alan.
Claire, let's start then by asking you, what is a shaman?
A shaman is, actually the word shaman means one who sees or one who knows. So it is somebody who has the ability to move into an altered state of consciousness, into different worlds, and to receive wisdom and healing for either themselves or for their client and community.
Okay, and I'm sure a bit later in the show we'll get into the different worlds that you go into and that kind of thing.
Yes.
So what is shamanic healing?
A shamanic healing, as I said, it is the person going into an altered state of consciousness, into these different worlds, bringing about healing for the client. So if somebody was to go to a shamanic healer, they would be going to the shamanic healer because they're experiencing some sort of dis-ease or discomfort in their life. So it could be an emotional discomfort, it could be physical, it could be mental or spiritual. Whatever the issue is, they would go to the shaman, speak about that to the shaman, and then it would be up to the shaman to go and receive these messages and wisdom in that altered state of consciousness, bringing about healing for the client.
Okay, and shamanic healing and shamans have obviously been around for a while. Just give us a little quick overview of the history.
Yeah, they say that shamanism is the oldest known spiritual practice, actually oldest known practice to man. It's been around for a very long time, and it's practiced all over the world in areas of North America, South America, Africa, parts of Mongolia. In fact, they say that is where it originated, was in Mongolia, in Australia, New Zealand, etc.
Okay. And how different is a shamanic healer to a sangoma? Are they very similar?
They are quite similar. A shamanic healing is specifically something that is Native American based, whereas sangoma healing is an African tradition. So they do have similar practices, but working on slightly different levels to each other.
Okay. So how can shamanic healing empower and bring healing into my life?
If you were experiencing some sort of a block in your life, as I said earlier, be it a physical or emotional or mental or any type of block, you would go to the shamanic healer and chat about that challenge that you're experiencing in your life. And then the shamanic healer will, on various different levels, help to heal the person. So during the healing process, the shamanic healer will be in that altered state of consciousness, receiving that wisdom from these different levels. Traditionally, the level that the shamanic healer works in is a place called the lower world, where the shaman will lower their vibration to take them to the space of the lower world to receive that wisdom from the elements of the earth. So we're looking at working with fire, air, earth and water. When we understand that everything actually has a spirit in it, so working with the spirit of the fire, the earth, the air and the water to bring back that wisdom from those elements, and also looking at communicating and receiving wisdom from the animal spirits in the lower world. This is quite different to the way a psychic medium works, for instance, which is a place of working in the upper world, which is where you would have things like the angels and the guardian angels, loved ones in spirit, etc. That is of a higher vibration, where you would go up to that space and receive the wisdom and healing from quite a different space. So the shamanic healer is the one that goes to the lower world to bring back that information and healing from their client, for their client on many different levels.
Okay, and you mentioned things like blockages, but what about things like illnesses that clients may have?
Sure, yes. The shamans understanding of an illness is that it is the physical manifestation of a vibration. So when we understand that everything in this world has or is a vibration, we can begin to understand that all illnesses come with a certain vibration attached to it too. It is up to the shaman to understand and know what the vibration of that illness is and what the root of that fear-based, because essentially any illness is a fear-based vibration. It's a low vibration. So they would go and look at the root cause of that and then remove that using different techniques. But certainly all illnesses are seen as a physical manifestation of that vibration.
Okay. So what kind of treatments can one expect when they come for a shamanic healing?
If you were coming for a healing because you were suffering with some sort of an illness, what would happen is, I think I said this earlier, we would chat about that first. And while we're chatting, I would then begin to get a sense of what that illness was about on an energetic level, okay? We, living in the physical world, sometimes find it hard to understand things from an energetic level. We look at things physically. But at that point of speaking, I would look at what the energetic level of that physical illness is. After speaking, that's when I would go into the altered state of consciousness and actually dream. It's called dreaming into the person's energy field to go and have a look with the third eye at what this vibration is and where it is located in the body. And then working with that, extracting that with the hand or using tools like crystals and other tools that the shaman decides to use, you would extract that. And I suppose a bit later on in the interview, we will also talk about various other things that happen in the healing once that is extracted.
Okay. So you were speaking about altered states of consciousness and then going into the lower worlds. What are these lower worlds?
The lower world, if we were to look at, to understand the lower world, we need to, again, this was said earlier, we need to understand that everything is a vibration. So if we understand that the earth that we're living on, it's called a place of the middle world, okay? So we have the middle world, which is vibrating at a certain frequency. We have the upper world, which I spoke about earlier, the higher frequency, where you would raise your vibration and go up to the upper world to commune with angels, guardian angels, etc. The lower world, you would lower your frequency, go to the space of the lower world, and this is where you would meet with animals, you would meet with plants, trees, anything primal. It's of a deep vibration. If I was to think of a color that would go with that lower world, it would be the reds, the browns, the deeper colors. If I was to think of a vibrational color for the upper world, it would be things like blues and purples. The middle world is more in between those two colors. So when we understand this frequency difference, and when we learn from our teachers how to either lower our frequency or increase our frequency, we can then travel into these spaces.
Okay. And you generally go into the lower worlds first?
Yes. The lower world, the middle world, and the upper world are actually all connected as well. So even though they sound separate, if you were to travel far enough down the lower world, you would actually come to the upper world. Okay. So it's actually a circle, really. But for me, in my journey, the way that I did it is I began working in the upper world first. I was working as a psychic medium first, and then I was taken to the lower world after that. But of course, it works differently for different people.
Okay, and you mentioned, you communicate with plants and animals, and that's where I assume you get the wisdom or the knowledge that you need to tell the client. Mm. So what is, when you talk with animals, is that where they get the totem animals come in?
Yes, certainly. Personally, I have one power animal, and my understanding is that everybody has one specific power animal that is specific to them, okay? We may have other animals that we work with too for different things, but we will have one specific power animal that is the animal that brings power back to us, essentially. When I travel into the lower world, I will be working with my animal which will take me into the lower world to go and meet with their animal to bring back power to them in the form of, it's called a power retrieval. So if somebody is feeling that they are not feeling particularly strong, or they're feeling powerless, they're not in their power in this world, one of the things I would look at would be to go into the lower world, meet with their power animal, and bring that vibration back, and actually quite literally you would blow that into the person's body, and they would also perhaps give us some wisdom and communication which could help the healing further for that client.
Okay. Now you say everyone has their own power animal. Is there some sort of symbolism behind each power animal?
Certainly, each power animal brings with it different, it's called medicine. So different power animals will bring forth different medicine for different people, and would be up to either the shaman or the person who is going to find their power animal to understand and know what that medicine is. There are generic symbols, but I would also say with that, it's more enlightening and powerful to speak directly with your power animal to see what that medicine is specifically for you, rather than just going with the general symbolism of what that animal means. Sure, have a look at that, but also speak to your animal and see, what is it you wanting to tell me at this time? What is it that I need to help heal my life, or to help move my life forward from you at this time?
Claire, so if someone comes to see you for a session, what happens during that session?
Okay, as I said earlier, what we would do is we would firstly just chat about what's going on for the client, why it is that they're there to see me. And it's during that time, which probably lasts about 20 minutes to half an hour, so I will start to receive impressions and begin to get an understanding of what's going on for the client on an energetic level whilst they're speaking. Once we have finished speaking, once I understand what the issues are that's presenting themselves to the client, what I do is move into the healing part of the session, which means that the client then moves onto a bed, and I just let them relax on the bed. And what I say is, I'm now going to not be speaking as I go into an altered state of consciousness. I use the drum to take me into that altered state of consciousness. The drum is a wonderful tool to use to lower one's vibration. It's a very earth-based vibration. This is often what shamans would use to take them into that state of the lower world. So using the drum, I use my voice as well, moving into that the lower world. I will then begin to receive information and impressions either from their power animal, from my animal, from whatever it is that I need to connect with will come forward at that time. Okay. One of the things that may happen for the person during the session is I may perform something called a spirit extraction, which essentially means extracting any low vibrational energy in the body that is preventing them from living a life of joy and love, preventing them from moving forward in their life. Okay. I will be able to feel where that low vibrational energy is in the body and actually quite literally extract it with my hand, perhaps using other tools. At the same time, I would look at what actually is that vibration. Yeah, I can feel it, I can remove it, but why is it there? What was the root cause? What happened in the person's life to cause that vibration to be there? Because it is very important to bring that information back for the client so that they have an understanding of where or how that developed, so that that doesn't happen again for themselves. So that's maybe something that could have developed from their own fear-based thoughts or any experience that they had growing up or even as an adult that may have caused this low vibration in them. It could also have been something that could have come in from the outside. So where, let's say, somebody had really strong feelings of jealousy towards somebody, and so strong the feelings that actually, as a sensitive energetic being, we can feel these feelings around us. And sometimes people absorb these energies coming in from the outside. So it works on two levels. It could be something created by the self, or it could be something that's come in from the outside. So that is spirit extraction. There is also something called soul retrieval, which we believe that throughout our lives there are moments where we may lose parts of our soul. The reason that we may lose parts of our soul are things like trauma, shock. So if we were in a very bad accident, for instance, and we had a really, really strong shock to the body, we may lose a part of our soul, okay, because it's too much for the soul to deal with at that time, so it escapes. Sometimes that part of the soul that is left doesn't know how to return naturally to the being. And it would be up to the shaman to actually then go and find where that soul is, where is it gone, and bring it back, and that's what gets blown back into the client. Other reasons why there could be soul loss in somebody could be perhaps they've had a loved one die, and maybe that was a shock to them. Maybe it was a quick thing that happened. They weren't expecting it. When that loved one dies, sometimes what can happen, and I've seen this in quite a lot of my clients, actually a part of them actually goes with them. A part of them goes to the upper world space. And I would look for things like, if a client came to see me and said something like, I just don't feel whole anymore. I'm just not myself. This happened. Somebody died, or I had an accident, or I broke up with my partner, etc. I'm not whole. That would be a sign for me that perhaps they're experiencing soul loss. Post-traumatic stress disorder is a very good example of a soul loss. It's shock after shock after shock, and so busy in this day and age. We're so busy, we don't give ourselves time to actually bring ourselves back together. So you would go to the shaman to do that for you. Another thing that a shamanic healer can do is can help people who have passed over onto the other side, who may not have fully integrated onto the other side. So it could be that they died in a shock. It could be perhaps a car accident, or a death that they weren't expecting. Sometimes they don't know that they've actually passed over, so what can happen is they stay in the space between the middle world, which I spoke about earlier, which is the earth, and the upper world. If they're stuck in that space, it can be that they are hanging around somebody on the earth, and the person on the earth could maybe feel, I just feel that there's something not quite right. I feel like we need to move them on. I feel like they're around me all the time. It would be up to the shaman to move or help move that person on comfortably to wherever they are meant to be going in the other world. Okay, and that is called Psychopomp.
Now, how would you do something like that, move them on comfortably?
Yeah, obviously this is all done in a trance state. You would go and communicate with them, quite literally. A shaman has the ability to communicate with beings, no matter where they are. Again, when we go back to that whole idea of understanding, when we really understand that everything is an energy, whether it has a physical body or not, to the shaman does not matter. When they're in that trance state, they can go, they can see quite literally with their third eye where this person is, why they're there, and can communicate with them and help them understand that actually if they're able to move forward, they would be in a much happier place. So the shaman is a little bit like a mediator. It's somebody that goes and has a chat with the person, explains to them that it's okay to let go now, they can move forward, and quite often at that point you would actually call in their spirit guide, either in the upper world or wherever they are. You would call them in, or it may be a loved one in spirit, perhaps their mother is in spirit, or their dear sister or whoever will come and collect them and move them forward into the light. And then the client who's come to see me or any shaman would feel a sense of lightness, okay? Because you can often feel a heaviness, which is natural when somebody dies, but sometimes if it's to the extreme, it may mean that that person hasn't fully moved on yet. I think I spoke about power animal retrieval a little bit earlier, but that could be another reason why somebody comes to a healing, is because they're not feeling powerful in this world. What is it about? What's happening? Why do they not feel powerful? Throughout our lives, we can give our energy away for various reasons. And through the giving of energy and the fact that our energy leaves us a lot of the time, we lose a lot of our power. And the shaman believes that the vibration of the animal, bringing that back to the person, will help bring the power back inside the person and help them feel a lot stronger. And then there is something called ancestral healing as well, which is very strong tradition shamanically, that we work with the ancestors, whether the person knew that ancestor or not, doesn't actually matter. What the belief is that we can carry, it's a thing called a gaish. We can carry an ancestral gaish on behalf of ancestors from hundreds of years ago. What is that vibration that we're carrying on behalf of them that they were unable to let go of when they passed over onto the other side? It may be that the client is working through that challenge on behalf of the ancestors through some karmic agreement. So ancestral healing would be about going and communicating with the ancestor on the other side and helping to heal them rather than the client who's come to see me, if that makes sense.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So that is an ancestral healing, which is a very strong practice shamanically. The shamans pray to the ancestors, and they keep the connection with the ancestors very strong, because if we keep the ancestors happy, we're happy.
Okay, and those are the main things that you cover. Soul retrieval. Is there anything else?
Those are the main things with any healing, and any healer will say this: no two healings are the same. It's not black and white. That is the basis of what a shamanic healing would entail, but there are various other aspects that may be involved as well.
Okay, and you mentioned some of the tools. You mentioned the drums takes you into a lower vibration, and I think earlier on you mentioned some other tools that you actually use. You mentioned crystals, that sometimes you use crystals. What are some of the other tools that you actually use during a session?
Yeah, the crystals I like to use because they are beautiful tools to help facilitate healing. Essentially, different crystals carry different vibrations, and when you begin to understand the vibration of each crystal and what their healing properties are, they can help you perform the healing. So for instance, what I do in my healings is, once the person has lain down on the bed, I ask them to hold I have a black tourmaline stone, which is a very deep, my voice even goes deep when I say that it's a deep vibrational crystal. And this crystal helps to release anything of a low vibration that is hindering the client moving forward. So I ask them to hold that in their right hand. In their left hand, I ask them to hold a rose quartz, which is a beautiful crystal, a loving crystal. It's a crystal of receptivity. So with that crystal, that helps to bring back the power and energy to the client in the form of the power retrieval or the soul retrieval. That will bring that back. So those are the two crystals that support me quite massively when I do my healings. I use other things like a rattle. A rattle can also be used to take you into the lower world, but personally I use the drum. But the rattle I use for opening the energy up within a client. So for instance, if I was to do a spirit extraction, which is removing low vibrational energy within the client, sometimes it can be very deeply rooted in that client, and I'm finding it a challenge to actually pull that out with my hand. What I can do is with the rattle, if you rattle above that area, it then opens that up more for me, and it loosens it essentially. It loosens the energy, and then I'm able to go in deep into the client and pull that out. The feathers I use as well. I like to use feathers because for me they represent anything of a winged being. Beautiful birds. It represents the air, the winged beings, the enlightened ones, guardian angels, etc. So the more feathers I use, the more I feel that I'm surrounded by the winged beings who are bringing through their wisdom and enlightenment.
Okay. And things like herbs, or is that mainly just to get you into an altered state of consciousness?
Yes, the herbs that I personally use are Californian white sage. That's what I like to burn. But it's quite hard to find that in this country. So traditionally, what people use in this country is something called impepu, which I burn sometimes as well. It's an African herb. So that I burn as well, the Californian white sage. And I also use something called Palo Santo, which is from South America. It's a bark from a sacred tree. And if you burn that as well, it's a beautiful, sweet smelling wood. And once that's lit, perhaps later we'll talk a bit about ceremony, but once I light these herbs, this brings me automatically into the space of working as a shaman, because for me, that is my link into that space.
Okay. Claire, before the break we were talking about, you mentioned something about ceremony. Just run us through some of the ceremony that happens during a session.
Yeah, sure. Ceremony is essential to the shamanic practice. So one of the things that a shaman uses is something called a medicine wheel. A medicine wheel is a circular space that has 7 directions in it. It has the 4 cardinal directions of north, south, west, and east. And it has something called Father Sky, Mother Earth, and the center, which they would call the Great Spirit or God, whatever the word is that you want to give it, the center of everything. North, south, west, and east each have a different spiritual element attached to it. So I think I said at the beginning of this interview that the shaman would work with the elements of the earth, fire, air, and water. Okay, so there will be one element attached to one cardinal direction, and when you are calling in each of those directions, you are calling in the medicine of that element too. The element of air sits at the north of the medicine wheel. The element of fire would sit at the east. The element of earth sits at the south. And the element of water sits at the west. Each of those elements, again, just a reminder that the shaman sees that everything has a spirit. So these elements have a spirit in them. The spirit of each of these elements will bring forth different medicine and communication and wisdom for the shaman to then relay or understand more about their client. So, for instance, if I was to call in the directions in a ceremonial way, I drum and I chant a certain chant to call these directions and these elements into the space to work with me, okay? Not just when I'm seeing a client. I will always call those directions in when I'm working in any way as a shaman, okay? Even if I want to just communicate with spirit, I call all the directions in. If I was connecting into the directions and the elements for a client, I actually do that prior to the appointment. I call the elements, the directions in. If I was to see that the spirit of air was very, very present in the room, but I can't find, I'm calling the earth in. I can't find the earth particularly. There's a little bit of earth coming in, but it's not really very present. It may suggest to me at that time that the client, the person coming to see me, might for some reason not be particularly rooted to the ground, not be particularly earth. Their head is very much in the clouds. They're not able to make earth-based decisions. They're not being particularly physical on the earth. So already these elements will begin to speak to me about what's going on for the client. And I would begin to think, well, I wonder what's gone on for them in their life that they are not particularly rooted to the earth. Have they had a shock? Have they lost faith in something? Why are they rising up into the air so much? If, for instance, I saw that the fire was really strong that came in, but there was hardly any water, I would then question that as well. What's going on in the person's life that their fire, their assertiveness, their power, their control is so strong? It's almost overly controlling, overly powerful. Whereas why is the water, which is the emotions, okay, the ability to flow, why are they feeling unable to flow forward at this moment? That's just a basic example of calling in the elements, which would then teach me a little bit about what's going on for the client. The farther sky, because the shaman sees everything as a vibration, the sky is seen as the vibration of the masculine. The earth is seen, the mother is seen as the vibration of the feminine. So calling in the divine masculine, the divine feminine, to work with the shaman as well, okay, which essentially means the wholeness, the merging of both. Bring that in so that I can connect with the divinity of both the masculine and feminine to work through me. It may be at that point that I'm calling in the Father Sky and the Mother Earth. As I'm calling in the Mother Earth, I may begin to feel, and this has actually happened to me before, where I actually feel like quite sick, calling in Mother Earth, and I start getting this really sick feeling in my stomach. And that may leave me wondering what's going on with them and their mother. Is there a relationship issue there that we may need to look at when the person comes to see me? And then the last thing I would call in would be the center of everything, which is the Great Spirit God. And, you know, that's really where we're working from. We're working from the sacred space of everything, essentially the thing that is in everything. Whilst these other elements will bring us messages and medicine, it's the Great Spirit that you really are working from, and that you would invoke. And obviously going to learn how to do all this, you would know how to invoke all those different elements, as well as the Father, the Mother, and the Great Spirit. So that ceremony is incredibly essential to the shamanic practice, but it's not just the medicine wheel ceremony. I think I spoke earlier about when I burn my herbs. For me personally, the minute I light my white sage, I'm in that space, that ceremonial space. I wear the same clothes when I'm working as a healer. The more you can create ceremony in that space, the quicker you're able to step into that role. Essentially, you're stepping into a role. You're stepping out of your everyday role. Me as Claire Creighton, somebody who goes shopping at Pick and Pay, you're stepping into the role of being the healer, the shamanic healer. So as much as I can do to support myself to step into that role, I will. And everybody will find their own ceremonial practices, but at the core of the shamanic ceremonial practice is the medicine wheel. And then I have certain crystals, of course. I have different clothes. I have smells. I chant the same sacred chant as well. The minute I open my mouth and start chanting that chant, it's in. I'm in that space. So incredibly important. Yeah.
Okay. So while you're doing all of this, and you mentioned the crystals and things like that as well, what am I going to experience while I'm lying there on the bed?
Yeah. It's different for different clients. Some people just nod off, to be quite honest. Others, what may happen with others is they may, while I am working with their energy, they may begin to feel and experience memories. As I'm lifting these old patterns, these old vibrations out of their body, they may actually have a memory suddenly of something that happened to them at 4 years old that they'd forgotten about, or that happened to them a while ago and they'd completely forgotten about it. So you may begin to remember things. You may just feel incredibly comfortable and just lie there, but most people, when they have finished from lying in that healing space, feel lighter. That's the feeling. When I look at them, you know, when you look at somebody whose eyes can sometimes show that they're holding on to a lot of stuff, but when you look at somebody who has come off that healing space, their eyes seem a lot clearer, and often they say they feel a lot lighter at that point. Yeah, sometimes people don't feel anything, but just feel that sense of lightness afterwards.
Okay. And after the session, what happens after that?
This is a very good question, actually, because as with any healer will say this, the person who is acting or working on behalf of spirit, bringing about healing for a client, is the facilitator. That's all they are. they are not going to heal the client. And I know that that might sound a bit odd from somebody who says that they're a shamanic healer. What I can do is facilitate that healing. I can do what I can do in that space, but I will always be given homework to give to the client in order for them to integrate that healing for themselves moving forward. Because the thing is, sometimes you come for a healing, everything feels absolutely fantastic. You feel in your power, you've been merged back with your animal, you've let go of past stuff, everything's working great. Then 3 or 4 or 5 days later, you start stepping back into old patterns. You're not integrating that healing. You know, imagine you've got soul parts that have left you, let's say, when you were 2 years old. They've been brought back to you. If you're not going to welcome those soul parts in whatever way is appropriate for that soul part, in whatever the homework is that's given to you to welcome them back, if you're not going to do that, well, why would the soul part want to stay? It may think, well, I'm more used to being where I was for the past 35 years. I might just go again. So it's very important to follow whatever guidance is given to you from the spirit that's given to the shaman that gives it to the client, the guidance and the homework in order to integrate that healing for yourself. So, and the homework may go on for a few months, actually, or maybe just a few days. It depends what comes in from the spirit.
So Claire, now, is shamanic healing suitable for everyone?
Yes, certainly. As I said earlier, anybody who's experiencing any sort of dis-ease or discomfort in their life, it's absolutely suitable for them, yes.
And what about pregnant women and small children?
Yes, it's if somebody is pregnant, it would be advisable to let the shamanic healer know that you're going to see that you are pregnant, but I have worked on pregnant women before. I've not worked on small children, but there's absolutely no reason why one wouldn't be able to work with children. I do even think that you can work with animals too, actually. So anything that has an energy with it, you can perform a shamanic healing on them.
Okay, and how long does a session take?
My sessions take about an hour and a half. Sometimes they can be between an hour and a half to 2 hours, but at least an hour and a half.
Okay,
yeah.
And you mentioned it's basically safe, so...
Yes, it is a safe practice, yes.
Okay, now if someone claims to be a shamanic healer, what qualifications should they have?
They should have certainly studied with somebody who is trained to teach shamanic healing. That's what I did in the UK, was actually studied with somebody who's trained to do that. And I think it's advisable, if somebody does go to a shamanic healer, absolutely no problem to ask the question to the person, where have you studied, what are your qualifications, etc., just so that you are fully informed before, because you know anybody can say that they're doing anything, but actually it's important to be knowledgeable about who the person is that you're going to see, and know that they are reputable and have trained with somebody who is a shaman themselves.
Okay. Obviously, I suppose they could also ask for references and things like that as well.
Yes, references, testimonials. Often these days on people's websites, they do have many testimonials there of previous healings that they've done, so you can have a look on the website as well.